that. I don't want to have anything to do with that.
The hustle for Furnished Finder is really around, can I go find clients that treat my home well, stay a long time, and come back or refer?
Here's the other thought to this, is that $179 a year, I'm not married to you.
If you don't have $179 a year for marketing in the real estate business,
get the out. I've got Jeff Hurst with me from Furnished Finder, which is super interesting because Furnished Finder, you guys primarily focus on midterm rentals, correct?
Exclusively. We only do 30-day plus rentals.
30-day plus rentals. Okay, so I got a lot of stuff we're going to be learning today, guys, so stick around. My first question for you, Jeff, is midterm rentals, AI, the world is coming to an end, according to everybody. Regular rentals are having a hard time cash flowing, which is why midterm rentals are so powerful in a lot of ways for entrepreneurs. People want to pick a path and stick with that path for 10, 15, 20 years. Is Furnished Finder and midterm rental going to be around in 10 years with the new way the world is going to be?
Yeah, I think 100%. This reminds me, and so, a little bit of background. So I started my career basically at HomeAway in Verbo. So 2010, HomeAway was doing all the roll-ups, kind of like pre-Airbnb. And, I had a career there where I was the head of strategy when we sold to Expedia. I was then running Verbo as the president, and then went on to be the chief operating officer of Expedia Group. So my career is short-term rental, and my career is really technology. I joined Furnished Finder a couple of years ago, and I honestly had no idea it existed. And so I'm running this, huge short-term rental brand, and I've never heard of it. And I'm like, there's no way these guys have got 200,000 properties, and I've just never heard of it. But they had. And it's because they found this niche that was really benefiting from what I call it the mountains on the sides of the valley. And so on one side, you've got Airbnb and Booking and Vrbo, and they've got regulatory pressure. They've got a lot of demand pressures, and increasingly they've got some quality control issues. On the other side, you've got Zillow, you've got CoStar, and you've got long-term. And they've got yield issues, and they've got increasing multifamily pressure, and they've got challenges in terms of how they deliver product. And in the middle, there's this niche. And the niche, I think, actually reminds me a lot of SubTo, of there's these riches and niches. And this niche is monthly furnished plus. And it benefits from a ton of macro tailwinds. One of them is regulatory. Short-term in most urban environments is at least regulated heavily, if not outright outlawed. The other is that there's 5 million shorting. There's a 4.7 million housing shortage in the U.S. We're building 800,000 a year. You're at least 6 years, probably more like 10 or 15, away from having enough housing.
That's if the demand doesn't grow.
Yeah, that's not accounting for we're going to need more houses beyond what we already have.
Right.
So there's this housing shortage, there's an affordability crisis, and there's interest rates. All of that's leading people to live differently. And when I was at Verbo, I kind of thought Chesky at Airbnb was full of crap. No, it's not that different. This is just some lipstick he's putting on how they describe it, but I buy into it now. And interestingly, what I see that's durable, I think older Americans are affluent and going to live differently. So 90% of wealth in the U.S. is Gen X and older. And the boomers and silent generation, and boomers in particular, like my mom travels 4 months out of the year. She's not rich. She's found a way to go spend time in Maine when it's hot in Texas. People are finding a way to spend time close to the grandparents, grandkids. There's this new category of travel that's really about being someplace months. Then the younger generation is actually living in these. And they're living in Furnished Finders because furniture is expensive.
Yeah.
And it's a terrible investment. And so you've got the flexibility to go move around for your career, for your personal life, by starting out renting for a longer period of time and not being tethered. And then in the middle, what's really driving it is mobility. And so our travelers are about a third of them are corporate. Think people building data centers that are more of your skilled labor. And then there's people who are traveling for their corporate jobs. 25% healthcare, that's kind of what we're known for, but it's not really most of what we do anymore. 20% I think is the most interesting. It's relocations. And it's not just insurance. It's people who are moving from, Tempe to Austin. They don't know where to live. They're going to rent for 6 months before they buy because buying is more expensive than it used to be. A lot of them end up just living there. They hold on to the place in Phoenix because it wasn't able to trade out. They rent that, they rent in the new spot, and they're making money on that trade. And then you've got academics and leisure in this long tail. But long-winded way of saying, none of those trends are going away in the next 10 years.
Agree. Now, I think when a lot of us learned about midterm rental, maybe even you, before you understood the stats, we all assumed it was traveling nurses, airline pilots, maybe some insurance stuff, right? And I see a lot of my students, the SubTo community, they're doing a ton of insurance just because there's so much more money in it. They can take maybe an average rental, let's say a 3-bed, 2-bath house in an HOA neighborhood, nice house. They can furnish it, do an Airbnb, but Airbnb is unreliable, sadly, seasonal in a lot of ways. And so people have kind of gone away from Airbnb, at least in my community. People are starting to go away from it. However, they look at Furnished Finder, they go, man, I can go and literally have 3 months of a solid client that comes from an insurance company, then a month gap, and then another 3 months or 2 months or whatever. And I can have month-long gaps between these renters. Worst case scenario, and I can still make more money than I can on Airbnb, and definitely way more money than I can make on a regular rental. And you're saying that it's not just insurance claims, it's relocations, which make a lot of sense. I think something that I just learned and just paid attention to for the first time is what you said was the ability to be mobile. The ability for me to go, okay, well, during COVID, we found that people can work from anywhere. And more companies are allowing for work from home, especially when you're like higher level. You go, I'm going to go work remote for 2 months in Colombia, or I'm going to go work in New York or what have you. I can go and rent a place that is already furnished. It's already decked out. Or heck, like you said, if I want to go live in Austin, but I don't know where I want to live in Austin, the worst thing you could do is buy a house in Austin before you understand the layout of Austin.
You don't like the neighbors, don't like the school, whatever it is, you're stuck.
Right. And you're like, man, I should have bought on this side of town. And I have a lot of employees that have moved here and they go buy on the west side of Phoenix just to realize they wish they were on the east side of Phoenix. But you don't get that unless you're in the ambiance and the ecosystem of the entire valley, if that makes sense. And Furnished Finder checks that box. Like you said, that's not going away anytime soon.
No, and I think it's important to, when you think about that Airbnb customer, it's typically a leisure trip. And, it's frankly what used to be about rooms in New York because there wasn't a hotel or you couldn't afford the hotel. That's not it anymore.
No.
They're not a rooms platform. They're a mass affluent to even just flat out affluent platform. We serve, I'd say a much more working class demographic. And so, the way I position what we do and why it's so valuable, if you take the nurse, she's traveling 9 months out of the year, maybe more, she's on a stipend. If she books on Airbnb, they're going to take over a week of take-home pay and platform fees. Furnished Finder doesn't have any platform fees. And so we're putting all that money in the landlord's pockets, and we're doing it, or ideally the landlord splitting it with the nurse. And we're doing that in a way that just puts the control back with the landlords. And so our model's classified, and I don't mean classified as secret. I mean, it's literally a classified site. We put your phone number up. We let you talk to the guest. We let you use your lease, your payment mechanism, and we don't take any commissions. And it's just like, I think that was the original promise of the internet, is how you help people get more out of their businesses, as opposed to how you capture more of their businesses, which is the direction it's gone.
How are you guys making money?
We charge a $179 a year subscription fee. So it feels like BRBO in 2005. And
holy moly.
That's it. And we make some extra money if you want to use our leases or if you want to use our tenant screening product. But it's a really low rent way to help independent landlords make money.
What's the side benefit to you only taking $179 a year? I imagine you don't have to deal with any of the knucklehead issues between the client.
We're not in the transaction.
Love that.
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine Airbnb has to be, the arbiter of all sorts of things all the time.
And they're always arbiting in one direction.
Which is going to be the guest always.
The guest always wins.
Guest makes a complaint. Airbnb host loses the money. They have to fight Airbnb for that money. You guys aren't in any of those transactions.
We're not. And I mean, a lot of it's because, someone's coming here for 90 days.
Yeah.
They want to FaceTime. They want to talk to you. They often want to come see the place before they actually sign the lease. Like, it feels more like long-term that way.
Honestly, like so many of my students use Furnished Finder, and I've never thought about it this way.
And, I think if you're, for any of your students, I think that, Furnished Finder can be all you need. Mm-hmm. I don't think you should ever count on any platform to be all you need. And so if you're focusing on insurance, we supplement the relationships you build in insurance, and you're likely to get an insurance booking from us, but you still need to go hustle a little more. And I think that's the difference. Airbnb, the hustle's about, can I make the best pickleball court? Can I design it the best? Can I whatever the best?
F that. I don't want to have anything to do with that.
The hustle for Furnished Finder is really around, can I go find clients that treat my home well, stay a long time, and come back or refer?
Okay, but also here's the other thought to this, is that $179 a year, I'm not married to you.
If you don't have $179 a year for marketing in the real estate business,
get the hell out.
Like you're running on a razor's edge.
Yeah, what are you doing? Yeah. And the reality is, if I'm doing Airbnb, the amount of money they take out of the pocket of the host, you kind of feel like, well, I'm investing all this money into this platform. I've got to make sure that my SEO is the best, and I'm tickling the platform and I'm doing everything I possibly can. And you kind of feel married to that platform to a certain degree. Whereas with what you guys are charging, $179?
I think it's about the best deal on the internet.
That's crazy.
Because, and you ask like, how does the math
work?
That's a
year.
You get 300,000 listings, like we can make some money and we can provide a good service, but it's $179 a year.
Wow. That is crazy when you really think about it, but the model is beautiful. As the person who would own Furnished Finder, I would also say, I don't want to be involved in this stuff. I don't want to be involved in this. I don't want to have a massive staff. I imagine at VRBO when you were running that, you guys had 3,000 employees. You probably don't have anywhere near that here.
I've got 40 in Austin, and we've got about 270 total because we have a huge team in Colombia that all they do is help landlords answer questions. No, this is just customer service.
Okay, cool.
And so we do almost all of our engineering in the U.S., but we have, and it's actually 200 women. And so our chief operating officer only hired women, trying to promote and empower women in Colombia, and that's the entire customer service and sales organization.
Women are just better at customer service anyway, guys, just straight up.
What's been interesting about it for us, our company's about 85% women, leadership's about 50% women, but our customer base is actually predominantly women. And I think that's been unique to learn, is that the landlords on our platform are more frequently women and also more frequently Gen X and Boomer. And so as you think about what this means for your students, the SubTo dynamic, especially when you're working with boomers or maybe even the silent generation, you can solve different problems for them than just they need money.
Right.
It doesn't have to just be a financial transaction. A lot of times they're actually incapable of upgrading a place or getting the financing because they need to live there, or maybe they need an ADU. And it just opens up a different set of problems you can go solve, kind of in line with the heritage of SubTo.
I would imagine with the client you guys have on your platform primarily being female, that might be because female group will typically want to host people, take care of people, etc. I see the same thing in Airbnb and like short-term rental stuff. I see not predominantly women, but I would say 65% of people I see are women. Every single one of my high-performing SubTo members that are using Furnished Finder are all women.
And I think a big difference between midterm and short term is that it is actually, it's not half the work. It's 1/40th of the work. If you're running an Airbnb well, you're turning over multiple times a week.
You're cleaning, you're dealing with complaints.
You're constantly fixing something. And a midterm, if you're running it well.
Who took the key when they left? It's like all day, every day you're dealing with something.
A well-running midterm, you're turning it over 4 times a year. And it's also probably going to work close to where you live. This doesn't have to be that you live in Austin, Texas, and your short terms are on the coast or in the hill country. Like it can be by University of Texas, it can be by the hospitals, it can be by community corridor. So you can do all of this near your home in a way that's much more approachable for a stay-at-home mom or for someone who's doing this more of a side hustle than like needing to commit to a full-time, I'm a property manager for short term.
Okay, I love this. And I don't know if you watch any of my content, but I talk a lot of crap about short-term rentals.
I've watched quite a bit of your content, and people have talked a lot of crap to me about short-term rentals over the last 13 years.
It's not. So here's what I think is going on with short-term rentals. I think what happens is a lot of high-income earning W-2 employees go, man, I need to get into real estate. Then they find out from their CPA or their tax advisor, we'll get into Airbnb because you can get that tax deduction, right? Because you can't get it anywhere else. And that's the upside. And so what happens is all these people flood into the short-term rental space and they have no chops to be able to make a super property with a super experience. And so what ends up happening is they either get deplatformed or they don't make money long-term, but they got that nice cost segregation in their first year. And I'd say that nice cost seg does enough for them where it can justify that purchase for 3 or 4 years. But after that 3 or 4 years, they start looking at their Airbnb and they go, man, I got $150,000 sunk into this thing. Now I got to turn over my furniture because it's been beat up. Why the heck did I get into short-term rental? Meanwhile, I'd say the top 10% of Airbnb or short-term rental hosts, they're killing it because they went out and they did all the things, right? They went after the affluent renter. And they made the pickleball court, like Rob Abasolo, a good friend of mine. Like he has a property here. He spent $40,000 on a pickleball court and he goes, it doubled my revenue. Okay, cool. I don't want to be in that game. For me, I want to scale my business. But for the client that's jumping into midterm rental or short-term rental, I look at the short-term rental game and I go, it's amazing. You get that tax benefit. I get that. And I think that's the downfall to midterm rental is that you're not going to get that. You are managing 100 plus hours a year. You are hitting that. The problem is the cost segregation or the real estate professional delegation or certification basically comes when you have an average stay of 7 days or less. So midterm rental disqualifies you from that. So that's the only downfall I see versus like short-term versus midterm. So people are watching this going, okay, I really want to get into this. I really like this. Well, the downfall is you're not going to get the tax benefits. You won't become a certified real estate professional, if that makes sense. But dude, you're only turning over a property 4 times a year?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very different asset class. And so, I mean, honestly, like...
It's really hard to compare, honestly.
You know, it's easy to compare. I think it's hard to want to do both because they're so different.
Different teams, different understanding, different clientele, different way to market. Yeah. Because also on the midterm side, a lot of my students use Furnished Finder. They love it. And then what they do is they go outside and they also are building relationships with insurance professionals, and they're trying to get, you know, a name for themselves to fill in the gaps where Furnished Finder maybe has a month or 2 or whatever it may be. And so you're not really doing that in short-term rental from my understanding. For me, I've always delegated to a team. So from the very beginning, I said, look, I have women that run my whole portfolio, 2,000 rentals, and I had 75 short-term rentals at one point. Now I have 0. Like that shows you how much I hate short-term rental. And I looked at that game and it was constant turnover, constant this, the Karens are on the platform leaving their reviews. I had the day that I decided I was done with short-term rental was I had a bridal shower in one of my houses. Perfectly fine. But they were all plugging into the kitchen island with all their blow dryers, and it kept popping the breaker. Well, obviously it is. You have 7 curling irons and blow dryers in the kitchen. What are you doing? And so this leaves a 1-star review. Oh, this guy has a bad electrical system. Like, it's a brand new house. It doesn't, you are a knucklehead and you're not using. So I go, you know what? I don't want to own assets that have that ability that people can leave a bad review because they're stupid. And then it took my money. And then I had to go and chase my money down. I go, I don't like short-term rental. I just decided I didn't like it. And so my team started selling them off, 1031ing into larger assets. But now I'm thinking, I've got about 15 rentals right now that are regular rentals that are making like $300 or $400 a month, and we're not happy with them, and we're about to get ready to sell them. I'm like, why don't I just go put them on Furnished Finder? Like, why wouldn't I go that route?
You know, for the cost of furniture, you can be off to the races. You can also put them on unfurnished and tell someone who wants to rent a midterm that I'll furnish it as soon as you sign a lease. And then they get the flexibility of like, maybe they need a bunk bed in the second bedroom because they're going to have their kids. Maybe they want 2 king beds because they're traveling couples that are going to travel together. Like, and that actually can be a selling point. A lot of people don't realize you can do that. You know, the other thing is rent by the room strategy, where whether you're using us or a customer of ours like padsplit, some of these assets you can actually monetize differently and better as furnished, you know, rent by the room, monthly rentals. Okay,
so let's talk about co-living for a minute. I want to come back to Furnished Finder, but a lot of our community, we talk about, you know, the old Wayne Gretzky quote. He says, I don't want to go where the puck is. I want to go where the puck is going. And where the puck is going is affordable housing, right? We know that. Also the niches as well, like Furnished Finder. So tons, I'd say 30% of our single family community, so I'm talking like 5,000 students, are just focused on co-living, right? Rent by the room. Padsplit's one of our platforms. I love Padsplit and everything Atticus is doing. Really smart guy. You're saying Padsplit is utilizing you guys? Are you guys collaborating to some degree?
Padsplit will put their rooms on Furnished Finder. So
Furnished Finder $179 a month or a year, why wouldn't they?
Yeah, and so you've got, you know, we have 60,000 rooms on the platform. We have 250,000, you know, single family homes in addition to that. And all of those are basically powered by independent landlords. So
wait, what do you mean by that? What's the difference between the 60,000 and the 250?
60,000 rooms. So I'm renting a room in a house.
Okay.
250,000 homes. So I'm renting the whole thing.
You have 60,000?
Rooms, yeah. And people, you know, a lot of people think about midterm rental as what it was in the pandemic. What was it in 22 when there were nurses?
Jeff, I just learned something powerful. This is ridiculous. I got to text my team. This is like, before I forget this, are you kidding me? This is crazy. And so people that I love Padsplit, but what you're telling me is that somebody like me who does a lot of co-living, or a lot of my students that do co-living, they can just pay the $179 a year, and they can put their rent by the room houses on your platform.
For sure.
The difference is now they're managing and communicating directly with them versus what Padsplit does is they do the management.
Padsplit charges a commission and does it all for you.
Right.
And Padsplit may or may not choose to advertise that room on our platform. Not everything on Padsplit is on Furnished Finder. We'd love for it to be that way, and I'll keep talking to Atticus and Cliff. But the opportunity for an independent landlord is you can still have it be on Furnished Finder, have it be on Zillow, have it be on Airbnb too. Just be sure they play nice together. Like you should charge more on Airbnb because you're more likely to have issues.
Right.
And you should, use Furnished Finder for the use cases you're trying to get out of it, and then have your own direct business too.
You just blew my mind.
People are, when I tell people we've got more 30-day plus rentals than Airbnb, they're shocked. But we've got twice as many. Airbnb has grown from don't want to get the stats too wrong. We're working on a report with AirDNA to kind of like help people understand the category. I think Airbnb has gone from like 110,000 30-day plus to like 150,000 since 2018. We've gone from 1,500 to 300,000. And so there's this huge movement towards this inventory type. And the tenants are following, and whereas it used to be 70% nurses, now it's 25% nurses. So when you take a longer term view of this, until you're talking about what's happening in the next 10 years, let's talk about what's happened in the last 7.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's where we are. We're up 200 and, it's 250 times what it used to be. And basically, the same price, similar value proposition. And what we're committed to is building a tech platform that makes it easy for people to do their business and do it in a way to where, I would love for us to always be like 1 to 2% of the amount of money you make is what you spend on marketing. Airbnb is going to be more like 15%. And if we can do something at 1 to 2%, that's a lot of value, maybe not as much hand-holding as what you get for the 10 to 15. I want people to just tell their friends and it'll grow and be referral. And the way we can do it is that it's a referral business. I don't have the money to go run national brand campaigns and win the Google battle. I've got to count on a bunch of people being glad they spent $179.
My gosh. Okay, so you're down to, you used to be 70% nurses in that business. Now you're at 25. What accounts for the rest of your demographic again?
Yeah, it's a third corporate, 25% relocations.
Okay.
Or sorry, 25% nursing, 20% relocations, about 10% academic. And so mainly grad students and professors. They move a ton.
Why is that?
Professors, because they're chasing tenure. They've got to move around to different universities, or often their field of study requires they do a semester somewhere or a year somewhere. And then the rest, I'd say, is long tail. A lot of it's leisure, it's snowbirds, it's the digital nomad scenario you were describing. But those big use cases are corporate's growing, I think, over 70% year on year.
Give me a description of corporate.
Corporate's got 2 types. One type would be your skilled trade. We see like data centers are the biggest growth spurt right now. Monroe, Louisiana and Abilene, Texas. But like we're going to be building more power and data centers than ever before. And it's the same people that have to build them all. Like there's just not that number of skilled trade workers. So they move all around the country and they need this temporary housing. Same thing for skyscraper construction, multifamily construction. Like you're moving a lot of tradespeople. The other part of corporate is more white collar. It's your entrepreneur, it's your salesperson, it's a consultant. It's less likely to be somebody from Goldman Sachs or McKinsey. It's more likely to be a small business owner.
Interesting. So I satisfy this need right now in my RV park business. We go into parks or we go into areas that have heavy oil construction, right? Like Big Spring, Texas or Abilene or whatever. And I'll go buy a park there because these guys will rent $800 a month on a piece of dirt. I have no management really whatsoever. I have one girl that runs 2 parks. I pay her $2,400 a month. And it satisfies this need because these oil workers can't be found in that town. And so they have to collect all these people. Nobody's going to go build houses for these people because that town, once the oil dries up in 30 years, those houses will be obsolete. So people are fearful of going out and building houses and gambling in that regard. So, RV parks become the thing. And now I'm looking at this, I'm like, man alive, I should go buy Furnished Finders in some of these towns as well. Like go buy existing houses and rent them out.
Absolutely.
I was talking to one of my RV park tenants. I drove through the other day. It was 3 weeks ago in Big Spring, Texas. And I hadn't seen this park. I've owned it for half a year. So we flew out. I'm driving through the park and I'm just seeing who's out hanging out in their little yard, And I'm saying, hey, what do you like about the park? What do you not like about the park? And what made you decide to come here versus going somewhere else? Like, why aren't you staying in a hotel or why don't you buy a house? Like, you've been here 5 years in this same spot. Why are you here? And I'm just getting educated, much like I'm getting, it's not very often I get educated on a podcast. Like I get entertained, but I'm getting educated right now, which is great. So thank you. So I asked this guy, what made you come here? What other options did you have? And he goes, well, we were renting a hotel. It was less expensive for us to just rent a hotel because I'm 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. And if I'm renting your spot, I'm renting it for the whole month.
Yep.
So I've got 2 months where I'm not, or 2 weeks I'm not even here. And I go, so why'd you choose? He goes, convenience. Like I want to be able to come to a place where I have my furniture and I have my stuff and I
leave stuff in the fridge.
I leave stuff in the fridge, or I have stuff in the pantry or whatever. And I come home and there's creature comforts. I'm like, why don't you just get a house? And he goes, well, I don't know where I'm going to be in 6 months.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, cool. Makes sense. So this park makes so much sense for you. And what other options do you have? And he says, well, you know, my brother and I just thought about renting a house in town and just splitting out the rooms. I'm like, okay, so co-living type of thing. But really that's what Furnished Finder would satisfy, is those types of workers that are transient to a certain degree, that are going to these towns. The worry I have is now as an investor, I start thinking, okay, where are some big data centers that you're talking about? Louisiana?
Monroe, Louisiana. Abilene's actually the
Okay,
biggest in the world.
As a massive like challenge that you're going to have as a real estate investor is knowing that they're pulling permits for a data center and going, all right, I'm going to aim to buy properties in this area. Do you have any advice for Furnished Finder investors that are like, hey, these are areas that you should be buying in?
Yeah, I think that the one, we publish a report every month that's got like, where's the most supply going? Where's the most demand going?
Where do I get that report?
It's on the Furnished Finder blog. So come to our website, check out the blog, and then we'll do quarterly episodes on Landlord Diaries, which is 2 of our resident landlords interviewing people like you, but also all of our independent landlords to just learn how to do this better. So I do a quarterly episode about trends. What I'd say about the data center boom is twofold. One, we're going to be building these for the next 20 years. So like getting to know it is a great strategy. The interesting thing about it is you basically have a 5-year build-up period where there are a ton of skilled trades coming through. And then it takes like 15 people to run these things. And so you really need to plan for your payback horizon to be pretty short, or know that you can fall back into a long-term strategy or something else. And so something like RVs can make a ton of sense because you've got a lot more mobility. What you see in these places is a lot of them, like they're actually building residence parks, you know, container style housing, RV style housing. Monroe has a huge one where they're contracting with people to go figure this out. The people are local, and there's a great opportunity to go basically be the boots on the ground.
I could put that on Furnished Finder.
Absolutely.
Like I could go get a piece of dirt, throw tiny homes on these things, throw each one of those houses on Furnished Finder and fill those things up. There's so much money to be made in this world. It's crazy.
It says there's a lot of niches out there.
And they're big, like these are big niches. It's kind of the same thing you said where you're like, you're at VRBO and you're like, I didn't even know Furnished Finder existed. Meanwhile, there's hundreds of thousands of investors that are doing this.
Absolutely. And you know, your original point on like, who are you competing with in short term, I think is an important anchor for how to think about midterm. Because I was one of those guys, you know, high paying W-2. I own 3 vacation rentals. They were as valuable for the tax write-offs, not just the first year, but every year. 2 of my 3 vacation rentals have never made money. But you make your money on appreciation. You know, you get some value out of the usage. Like there's a lot of benefits to it. But as an independent entrepreneur who's looking for a cash on cash return, you're competing with a bunch of people who don't care about a cash on cash return. It actually makes everything harder. And so you're basically choosing to compete in an irrational market in many cases. And it gets more irrational the more you're chasing waterfront or ski in, ski out, or, you know, kind of the scarce amenities. In midterm, you're really competing with a lot of rational investors. And you're often competing with people who are less skilled operators. And so it feels more like 2008 in short term, where you get in, you iron out your, you know, operating procedures, you have a plan, and you can really get durably ahead. Because there's not going to be someone who just steps in and is willing to lose money forever because they like having a place in Crested Butte.
That's what I did. I mean, what I did is I jumped into Airbnb, primarily Atlanta. I just loved the Atlanta market. I knew people were moving there. It's Hollywood of the South. It's just a cool spot. And I was buying a ton of SubTo deals under 3%. You know, I'm in the deal like less than 5% of the acquisition price with, you know, $10,000 to the seller. Agent gets a little bit of money, closing costs. I'm putting in some furniture. I buy the house for $600,000, but I'm all in maybe $30,000-$40,000, right? And I put it on Airbnb. I do a cost segregation. I make 5 years of amazing tax. You know, I basically pull 5 years forward, and I'm like, dude, I'm not paying any taxes on $300,000 of other active income, and they made sense for me, right? Then Airbnb becomes outlawed. Right, especially in Atlanta, Georgia.
I mean, almost every major city.
Which is crazy. And I want to know where that's coming from, especially you were running and massive part of VRBO. You guys call it Verbo. We call it VRBO.
I was there for both eras, was part of the rebranding to Verbo.
Okay.
It worked. But yeah, I was the president of Vrbo.
Okay, cool. So for me, you're so right, because I'm buying that not even necessarily for cash flow. I just go, I know Atlanta's going to appreciate.
Yep.
And if I break it, hell, even if I lose $400 a month, this thing makes money. Sense.
Totally.
I'll hold it for 5-7 years. I'll sell the thing. I'll 1031 into a larger asset, basically making $300,000 in appreciation over that time period, plus my tax benefits. That's who you're competing with on short-term rental. You're so right. You're competing against me. Then you go into midterm rental. I feel like you have to know that market just a little bit better than an Airbnb operator does.
I think that's right. And I think it's also easier to know. And so, I mean, I think one of the biggest mantras I'd have is invest in what you know. And so, like, you had Ken McElroy on recently.
Love Ken, yeah.
A great show. And, really, his origin story is one of necessity. Like, he had to go get a job in multifamily because he had to pay rent.
Right.
And you can look at that as like a curse, or you can look at it as a gift. But, like, people know who's coming to their neighborhoods.
Right.
People know who's working in their neighborhoods. And it's easier it's more approachable in my mind to think about, well, where do the nurses live? Where do the academics live? Where is the construction class living? And how do I serve them? Than it is necessarily, well, I wonder how people vacation from here.
Yeah, in the Smoky Mountains on the other side of the country.
How do I serve somebody in Gatlinburg where people are coming from all over the world and it's totally different and I'm 6 hours away? And so, like, if you think about what's the use case you can best serve, and one of the ones I really encourage people to think about, like, if you live in a neighborhood where people are remodeling or doing teardowns, where are your friends and family going when they remodel or tear down? Like, what does it look like to have a house in your community that's an asset, that every time someone is doing a teardown or a remodel, they can live there, and their kids can still walk and play with your kids, and they can still walk to school and ride their bike, and, like, they're willing to pay a lot of money that, because their alternative is probably to be in a multifamily that's a corporate rental or to be on the other side of town. And it doesn't take many of those, but that's why I think this is so durable, and that there's not going to be a not in my backyard movement when the house next door is actually helping your friend whose house burned down. Or when the house next door is occupied by a professor who's there for 6 months with his young kids.
Or somebody who's working and building the town up rather than some party animal.
It's never going to be 12 curling irons. There may be a truck outside, or there may be some great kids that your kids are going to get to know.
Gosh. Okay. So you look at Furnished Finder versus Airbnb. Do you feel like Airbnb is going to say, holy crap, we're missing the boat, and they're going to try and steal some of your market share?
Airbnb is huge, and I'll always be thinking about what the big guys on the other side of the valley do. I guess if my lasting legacy was that Airbnb dropped their annual price to $179 a year, I'd be a little bit of a hero, but it'd be tough on the business. I think serving this market is incompatible with their business model. It's not incompatible for them to, maybe serve somebody wealthy who's trying to spend 3 months in Montana. Like, it's 12% fee. They've got money. They'll pay it. But it is incompatible if you're making $80,000 as a medical professional and you're on stipend, and the difference between booking on Furnished Finder and Airbnb is a week and a half's take-home pay.
It's not even the same.
You're going to work on Furnished Finder.
They're so in deep in what they're doing. There's no way for them to pivot to what you guys do.
And I talk a lot with the team about comparisons the thief of joy. I was at HomeAway in 2010. We built a wonderful business. From when I joined, it was worth less than $1 billion. At the peak, it was probably worth close to $10 billion. Almost every week along that journey, I felt a little bit like a loser because I hadn't built Airbnb. Airbnb is worth $70 billion.
Yeah.
Everything was a little faster.
We suck.
We were trying to be something we weren't, and we were beating ourselves up over the inability to be it. And there's a lot I've taken with me from that chapter.
Were you aware of that at the time? Or was it after the fact that you will look back and go, crap?
There was 7 or 8 years of banging my head against the wall before I realized, like, they've got a different model. They've got different customers. They've got a different brand. We can't win that thing. And so when I became president, we pivoted into what we call complex families. Like, we can be better at helping grandparents, parents, and kids plan a trip to Gatlinburg. We can nail that, because it's more of a niche. And so we really refocused around these large private homes. But when I'm at Furnished Finder, like, I just really have to remind ourselves, the thing we're doing costs on average $2,000, $2,500 a month. Airbnb is $2,000, $2,500 a week.
Yeah.
And so, like, we're doing something different. I don't have any ambitions that it's ever going to be as big as that or as global as that, but we're doing something valuable.
You solve a massive problem that nobody else is solving.
And we're helping 240,000 landlords and growing, like, make money, create financial independence, and serve a community in a way that I think is uniquely different than, I bought a place in Gatlinburg or Crested Butte or Aspen, and, it's fun 2 weeks of the year.
This is a way better model. Again, the only downfall to it is the lack of the tax benefits.
For sure. But it's the tax benefits are valuable because you're losing money.
Right.
The benefit of this model is you're actually making money. I think that 0 to 1 moment for people, it's like, and I check myself on this a lot. Like I've got 3-second homes, like only one of them makes money. If you're going from 0 to 1, you don't usually have the luxury of, I'll just lose money on this for the next 6 years and hope it works out.
Right.
You need something to make money. And I think what's great about the category, especially if you look at an arbitrage model or something, like you can be making money in a month.
Yeah.
And then you can use that to do it again and make a little more money and a little more money. And like maybe eventually you end up with, a place in Montana or a place on the coast, but it's because you made decisions that layered up to that. Not because, and I mean, good on you. If you had a W-2 job that makes it possible, great. But if you don't, this is a faster path to cash flow positive.
Okay, so why is VRBO or Verbo
Yep.
and Airbnb under attack locally?
It's mainly hotels.
Are they spending money?
I've been subpoenaed. I testified. I've done this all through my tenure at Verbo. The hotel lobby spends an incredible amount of money to pressure and organize around short-term rental regulation. And the biggest issue with short-term rental regulation is your use case, because you own 60 properties in Atlanta and you don't vote in Atlanta.
No.
And the hotel lobby has lots of people and unions who actually vote and can get out and influence city councilmen. But the reason the regulations aren't going to roll back is it's actually good politics. Like, it's not just good politics in Atlanta. It's been good politics in every city in America. There's now some sort of ban. There's some sort of tightening regulation. And it's because most communities don't want the noise nuisance. They don't want the trash nuisance. And I do think it's gotten a bad rap and it's unfair, but I don't think it's unwinding. And it's because there's a lot of powerful interests that lined up against it.
That's what I assumed, right? I've never been like a big Airbnb person, meaning getting tied up in all the ethos of all the news stuff coming out about it. I just reacted to things happening to me.
Yep.
I knew when Atlanta was going to, and they're working on it, it took about 2 years, and people told me, start selling your properties now, and I did. Luckily, before the ban came in Atlanta, I had most of my stuff sold. But then Vegas, same thing, I had 17 in Vegas. I have none in Vegas. Are the regulations going to get worse?
Number one question I get every day is, how do I get everything done? I have 9 companies, 600 employees. We have customers all over the globe. We're doing fix and flips. We're doing buy and holds, apartments, RV parks, all of those things. Everybody wonders, how did I scale? How did I get to a higher level? And the answer is that, GoHighLevel. I use a CRM that allows all of my customers to come into one database. And instead of me hiring more employees to go and do all the follow-up, GoHighLevel has systems and automations that does all of that for me. So not only can I have my employees focus on higher end tasks, money-making tasks, GoHighLevel avoids all of the extra payroll. When you're brand new, having GoHighLevel is like having 5 different employees doing all the work for you just for a monthly fee. Go to GoHighLevel.com/pace to learn how I'm using it, not only in my lending business, but my wholesale business, my fix and flip business. Literally, GoHighLevel controls the entire back end of all 9 of my companies. Go to GoHighLevel.com/pace to learn more.
There's not a lot of worse left.
Okay.
I think it's mainly happened. You may see some red state, blue state dynamics where there could be a few wins at a state level. Arizona used to have stronger preemption for short-term rentals. It's been weakened over the years. Florida used to have it. It's been weakened. Texas has tried for 15 years and not created one. I think if Texas and Florida aren't creating property right preemptions for short-term rentals, I wouldn't have a lot of hope, just because strict property rights, conservative states, like it's the type of place they should win.
Right.
But I don't think it gets a lot worse, because I'm not sure how much worse it can get.
Okay, so Phoenix just passed a law, downtown Phoenix. They said if you have a property within 4 miles of city center, we'll allow you to add an ADU in the back of your property, which is awesome. And I see this happening all over the country.
It's good politics.
How does this help you for Furnished Finder? Can I go and put an ADU and rent that out?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a ton of ADUs on the site. Whether they're marketed as a room or whether they're marketed as a single family home, it depends on the type of ADU. I think they typically be single family.
Does it benefit me to do it as a single family or as rent by the room?
There's a bigger market for single family, but there is a market for each.
Because there's probably a stigma with rent by the room where people go, I don't want to be like a wall away from somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, I think in particular, if it's got a kitchenette, it's got its own bathroom, it's got its own entry, it doesn't have a shared entry with the rest of the house, like you don't want to, I would not rent it as a room. Like it is very much more of a single family type experience. You know, the room rentals are much more around, I've got a shared living room, a shared kitchen, or even a shared bathroom, and there's plenty of those. And so I think you would want to be building that second type of product if you can do it at a price point that's more competitive with the room. And I think great advice for people getting started. How close are you to an extended stay America, and how much does that hotel cost? And if you can provide a better value than the extended stay America price point, you know, and it is not a high luxury price point, but it's, say it's 500 square foot room and they're going to get $80 a night. So, you know, all of a sudden you're looking at, you know, $2,500 for an extended stay America to be there a month. You can provide a way better value with an ADU.
Yeah.
And make a ton of money if you're able to get $1,500 a month. And so there's a lot of opportunity there where I think ADUs, and in particular maybe ADUs for what I was talking about of that like boomer generation, where maybe you can actually add an ADU to someone's property without having to own it and partner with them and start making income, or even provide an alternative for them to downsize
So
and
you're
rent out
talking
their house.
about essentially land arbitrage, but put my own unit there. Is
Yep.
that what you're saying?
Or imagine someone's, I was watching one of the triple digit flip episodes, you know, imagine someone has too much house, they can't keep track of it. They actually move into the ADU. You rehab the home.
Yep.
And then you're renting it out and you're in a spot to where you don't have to come in for the land, you don't have to come in for the principal, you're just coming in to help basically partner with someone who's got the asset you need, but doesn't have either the capital or the expertise to turn it into a 3-bedroom furnished finder.
Gosh, there's so many use cases for Furnished Finder.
And no one's going to pitch that. You know, like most people who are out shopping for real estate aren't thinking about, okay, what's the asset? What's the property? How can I partner with somebody? They're just thinking about, can I make a cash offer? Like, what does that look like? And I think those partnership opportunities are going to expand because there is a lot of attachment for the boomer generation. They may have been in that house for 35 years.
It's so smart. And now that's not my business model, right? I want to own the thing that I have, and I want to scale the ownership. But when I'm starting out, what's cool is there's ADU companies that are coming out. I have a student that's building modular homes or ADUs, and he's seller financing their units they're building to buyers. So you, starting brand new, could go, I'm going to find a seller that has a decent sized backyard, and I'm going to place this ADU on their property. I'm going to have the manufacturer place this, install this, finance it all in one place. They'll seller finance that payment to me, and then I go rent it out on Furnished Finder on somebody else's land.
Yep. Well, and even in your use case, even if you want to own it, I think there's opportunity to partner with somebody where you buy the property and let them live low rent in a new ADU.
Oh my gosh, this is so good. Okay, so this is cool. So I don't know if you got in here a little bit early, but I have about 150 people here that are learning from me this week.
They were all very disappointed that I got let in early and they didn't.
Yeah. Well, they weren't supposed to be here till 10 a.m. And they're all so excited about today.
They were amped.
Yeah, they were amped. So they're here with me the whole week, which is great. And out of this group yesterday, I had this girl, they're 150 brand new people, right? And they're learning creative finance. We do a lot of cash too. Last year, our community did 10 billion in cash transactions and 27 billion in creative finance transactions. So we do a lot of cash too. But when a girl stands up and she goes, I just can't imagine a seller wanting to let somebody take over their payments. Can you guys help me with a story? Can you give me a story? I've watched a lot of Pace's stuff, but like, is there any other person in this room that's done a deal? I need to be convinced that a seller will let you take over their payments. So another student stands up. She goes, my name is Carol Leach, and Pace saved me from foreclosure 6 years ago. And now here I am learning from Pace how to do the same thing for other people. So I helped her 6 years ago. And I used to go out in the living room and I would negotiate. I'd send postcards. That's where I started in 2012, as I would send postcards to people. Okay, so my point of this is I run into people in the living room that go, I need to sell my house. This house is too much for me, but I have no idea where I'm going to go.
Yep.
I have no idea where I'm going to go. And there's so many sellers that all say the same thing. And I would ask them in the living room, where are you going to go? My first deal I ever did, 2012, I asked the lady, Janie Munson, I said, Janie, where are you going to go when I buy your house? I'm going to move in with my sister. I really don't want to, but I'm going to. And with the money that you're going to give me, I'll basically be able to pay her rent for the rest of my life. Okay. Well, what if I just put an ADU in the back?
Right. Same neighbors, same neighborhood. Yeah.
She just has a down, maybe her payment goes from $1,800 to $300 or whatever. It solves literally, I'm telling you, Jeff, this solves thousands of sellers' problems by putting an ADU in the back and partnering with the seller
not,
somehow.
I think you're not limited to the SubTo of pick up their payments.
Of course.
Most boomers own the house.
Yes.
And so you're in a position to say, how would you like to live in a more modern, smaller footprint? And I'm going to pay you.
It's like a reverse mortgage without a reverse
like
mortgage.
A reverse mortgage, but there's no mortgage to take out.
Oh, bro, what an amazing opportunity there is.
And you're really solving a problem. Somebody has too much house.
You're making me want to run through a wall. I'm like, let's go get some deals done. That's a great freaking solution for people.
I mean, find a way to put it on Furnished Finder, and I'll keep providing the ideas if you keep organizing the community.
I will 100% do that. That is so smart. Oh my gosh. And reverse mortgages are actually toxic in a lot of cases. They're not good for the consumer. And we end up coming in and these elderly people are like, I've taken all the money off my reverse mortgage. I'm out of money and I don't know where I'm going to go.
Right. And you're staring down a bank who's going to take the property instead of I'm living on the property. I've got a partner. Or I'm thrilled there's 2 nurses living in my old house while I'm in the ADU because I'm 74 years old. And I love knowing there's someone nearby.
Right. Oh my gosh. Wow. You got me pumped up today about Furnished Finder. Do you feel like there's going to be regulation on what you guys are doing in the future?
I think at the HOA level, anything's possible. My perspective, and certainly knock on wood, 30-day leases are pretty sacred. I don't think there's a lot of room to start saying, well, instead of 30, it needs to be 90. Or instead of 90, it has to be a year. You're going to be exacerbating a housing problem. And we don't get complaints the same way we did with short-term rentals about noise and nuisance and trash and too many cars and a party, because it's the family from down the street whose roof burned down, or it's a professor, or it's just such a different use case of professionals who need housing or people who are in trouble and need housing, that they're there to live. They're not there to party. I'll be surprised if that tide turns, but at an HOA level, I think anything's possible, and so it's always good to know your less elected officials and what they might be able to do.
Any other type of regulation besides HOA? Anybody coming after you, like a lobby group, like a hotel company would be coming after an Airbnb?
I haven't experienced it yet. Our average length of stay is 94 days. There's not a hotel company that's got 94 stay days. It is interesting. The top hotel investment right now is extended stays. And so all of the money in the hotel category is going into products that have the kitchenette, have the suite, are really serving this type of use case.
Yeah.
I see it way more as validation than competition, because I think that the more people realize that, hey, there's this type of hotel that's $140 a night, or I can stay in this awesome ADU in a neighborhood for the equivalent of $80 a night. Like, what is the real benefit? And so I think we've got a lot of runway on it.
My word. Okay, so next 10 years for you guys, what's your roadmap? What are you releasing? What are you doing differently? Are you adding AI to the search? Are you helping your customers come up with better markets? What are you doing over the next couple of years?
It's I don't look 10 years out in terms of what we're building. For anyone who's used Furnished Finder, we call it a natural beauty. And so it's a great value because we've got great landlords with great properties. The technology needed a massive upgrade when I arrived. And so what we're trying to do is make it an experience that feels just as good as any other modern platform. So we just launched new messaging features, and so now all the messaging is modern and fast, and we'll be able to help tenants and landlords know, hey, Pace usually responds within 15 minutes, but Jerry only responds every 24 hours. And so set expectations and start to improve the hygiene.
Which is huge, because on Airbnb, when they had those types of things, it's like, okay, I don't have an expectation that Jill is going to text me in 4 minutes. It says Jill's usually within a couple of hours. So I send a message. I go, cool. I can wait 3 hours before I sound the alarms.
Right.
Versus when you first show up at Furnished Finder, you got potential tenants pissed off going, why won't these people reply?
Why doesn't it work like Airbnb?
Right.
And so, the focus is to really catch up to Airbnb 10 years ago. We've got to have better responsiveness, better calendar, better rates, better photos. But we built this at HomeAway. Of my team, 35 of us worked with me for 5 to 10 years at HomeAway. We know what to build. We're building it as fast as we can. What you can expect is a modern, fast, mobile-friendly experience that increasingly uses AI for things like the chat function, because you having to reply, 15 times a year what types of cats you do or don't expect, we can do that for you. We can help people with a lot of the basic chat functions. And so we'll be building AI into that landlord-tenant interaction at the landlord's discretion for how they use it. We've already launched AI for our help center. And so really helping people with onboarding, with questions about how to use the product. Eventually, I think it will be a powerful part of search, but I don't think it's that soon. And so, a little bit because of our economic model, we probably have a better opportunity to participate in, how the LLMs surface things and how people search our site, because it may be trickier if you're trying to earn a 15% commission. Where do you get introduced and how do you provide access? Us as a classified, if ChatGPT tells someone to go to Pace's Furnished Finder, great. ChatGPT is helping me out, and we want to make that possible, and we'll build more of that in. But right now, it's very foundational. Make it fast, make it easy, make it intuitive. I think we've got about, 9 to 12 more months of getting to that modern experience, and then we'll start to do what feels more of the innovation. But if you've been using us for 3 years, it already feels pretty innovative because it's fast and it works now. And it frequently wasn't fast and often, had idiosyncrasies you wouldn't expect in the past.
What are some things that your landlords are doing that you wish they wouldn't do? Mistakes they made, red flags they create?
I'd say there's two types. I think the number one complaint from tenants is landlords don't get back to them. And I think if you're a landlord who grew up on Zillow or apartments.com, you're used to, I've got this classified, I turned it on, I got my tenant, and I just forgot about it. We don't want that dynamic. We want you to update your calendar. We want the tenants to be having a good experience, and we want to be able to better set the expectations of ideally everybody's getting back to people within an hour. Ideally it's minutes, but right now, almost a third of tenants don't get a response from a landlord they reach out to.
Feels like herding cats. How do you kind of force that landlord to do that better?
It is a playbook like you would have experienced in early Airbnb of we publish the response time. We'll publish how often they get back to you, and then we'll reward people in sort order who are just, doing the basic hygiene.
There you go. I love that. You're rewarding them in sort order so that they're rewarded with more tenants, more eyeballs, more whatever by being that person actually does what they should be doing.
And I think we also have a dynamic where there are many of our more established landlords might put 2 properties on Landlord but have on Furnished Finder but have 15. And they use those 2 properties to move people around to save the $179 on the other properties. And we need to
You freaking cheapskates.
we need to find a better approach there because the the bait and switch does hurt the tenant experience. I'm happy they end up in a home that works for them, but I would rather see that inventory on the side.
It's really interesting to me. There's the 1% of investors I know that are like, spend the money, do the thing. Then the 99% are like, Pace, how do I scale? I'm like, well, first off, stop trying to save $179 per house when these guys are bringing tenants to you that are paying more money than your regular rental.
You're going to pay it back in 3 days.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
It's so crazy to me. It's a mindset I think that maybe even I was born with, which was save money, be frugal, do all those things. But then they're hurting their experience.
They view it as a risk of losing money instead of you're going to do 5 of these things to make money. Like, not everything works out. Not everything works out the way you want to, but you've got to be trying things and learning.
I'm so different. I would never even think to do that. I would never think, oh, I have 12 properties. How do I just put 2 of them on there so I can do more work,
right?
And bait and switch people and filter them here.
It is not serving them well, but it's a choice they're making, and it's something we'd like to. And some of it is we should have better integrations with your Turbo Tenant, your Hostfully, your Rent Ready. We should make it easier for people to manage 10 properties, and we have to build that. But in the interim, we want to be able to know our tenants are going to see what they can book on the site.
Now I can see exactly why Furnished Finder wanted you over there. Like, you're freaking genius, man.
I'm going to do something that's been done, and hopefully we do it fast and well.
Okay, so what if you did $179 a month for the first 3 houses, and then houses after that
That is what we do.
Oh, you do that, and people still don't.
You get a discount the more inventory you add.
You cheapskates. Are you freaking kidding me? People just will do anything to like cut off their nose to spite their face. And so what they're doing is they're bait and switching their client. Go, oh, you know what? That already booked. But I have these other 6.
What I hear the most is I signed up for Furnished Finder. I got a booking. It's awesome. But now I don't really need that listing anymore. So I'm going to try and transfer it to another house because I'm already booked. And it's like, well, that wasn't really the handshake. You gave me $179. You got an $8,000 rental. Wait 3 months, turn it back on in 3 months, and we'll find you another tenant.
Did you see this kind of crap at Vrbo too?
Yes, I did. Yeah. There's plenty of this out there in the world.
You cheapskates. Oh my word. Wow.
I'll be more diplomatic of make the investments to grow your business.
I'm less diplomatic. I'm just like, spend the freaking money, you idiot. Like, well, it doesn't make any sense to me why you would try and save $179 and you would go out of your way. And the reality is a scaled real estate investor would look back at his time and his energy, or her time and her energy, and say, that is not worth my time to save $179 a year.
And to start by, hey, Pace, I know you wanted this house, but I'm going to put you in another one that's not on, like, you're getting the entire relationship off to a strange, trust deficit for a landlord and a tenant.
And you're asking these people to stay with you for an average of 94 days when the beginning of the relationship.
And over half of them extend.
Interesting.
And, and I think that's coming from short-term world, you think of your calendar like this unsolvable Tetris game.
Right.
How am I going to connect all these dots to maximize occupancy? Midterm, get a booking, assume it's going to extend, have a lease that's got terms for notification, and now you can know when to lease up again. But then you literally don't have to be doing any leasing work because it's booked. And then 30 days before they depart, they're more than half the time going to extend. And then, or they're going to say, hey, I'm leaving in 30 days, advertise the unit. And that's where you're taking your life back. Wow.
Over half of them renew. That's genius. You never really think about that. Now, you guys really
how
do
often
have
your remodels might be on time. Most people's are not on time. And so if you're remodeling your building, or you're building a data center, or you're building a skyscraper, like, construction is often extended.
Yeah,
so you're extending.
It's twice as long as you think, 3 times as much as you plan for. And my neighbor, I've got I live in a pretty, very small little 10 home little neighborhood. And one of my neighbors, his house burned down last year and they're rebuilding it. And I'm sitting there going, oh, they'll be done in a year and a half. Okay, well, we're on 4 years and they're barely stuccoing this thing, right? 4 years later. And I asked the guy, what are you doing? He goes, oh, I'm in a Furnished Finder, like 2 neighborhoods over.
All right.
For 4 years.
Yeah.
And the insurance company just keeps paying for this freaking thing. And he goes, I almost forgot that I even own that house. I feel like this is my house.
Right.
I've been there for 4 years.
I'm emotionally attached to my Furnished Finder now.
Interesting. Okay, so let's think. I'm new. I go to furnishedfinder.com today. I go to the blog. I find some of the areas that you guys see, hotspots and data centers and all of those types of things. What I would do as somebody brand new, I'd go, okay, I know the areas that are hot. I know the areas that are growing. I'm going to go on creativelisting.com, or I'm going to go on, which is where you can get SubTo and seller finance deals. And I'm going to go on there and buy a property there. How do I know what it would make?
Yeah, that is a place we need to do more work. Okay. I'd say there's a calibration on it. And so,
because most people are using AirDNA.
AirDNA is a good place to start.
And that's even good for Furnished Finder.
It is good for Furnished Finder because there's so many more short-term rentals to help benchmark. And so, what I would say is when you think about those giants on the opposite ends, Zillow has an estimator tool. That is your long-term. And think about that as your floor. You're typically going to be able to do 30 to 50% better than long-term.
Okay.
Think about what's happening on short-term as being instructive for you shouldn't be pricing that high on a nightly basis. And you may be able to make as much money. It really depends on the market dynamics.
Yeah, 12 different.
But I would usually think of that as either like your goal is to make as much as the short term, or you understand the market better to where you can have some nuances on that. I think long term is the better starting point. Go assume 100% occupancy on a long-term rent, and then add 30 to 50% and have that be your target. And when you're thinking about the competitive dynamics, you're pricing against Airbnb, which, good news, they've got a 15% extra charge that's going to be built in. You're looking at Zillow. Zillow has about 70,000 furnished flexible lease options in the U.S. We have 300,000. Of their 70,000, or maybe it's 80, only 10,000 are single family. It's almost all multifamily. But you've got an idea of what they're charging. And then you look at the extended stay Americans in the hotels, and then I would plan on 90, 95% occupancy if you're doing your research right and know you've got a property that's got the dynamics of one of those target personas.
So at some point you guys will release, again, this goes back to what you were talking about, is that you're going to spend the next 9 to 12 months cleaning up and speeding up the tech, and then you'll start doing innovative stuff like that. You'll have your own underwriting tool.
We have a product right now that it's Furnished Finder /stats. You can look up any city in the U.S. and it'll tell you how much inventory is there, what are the price points, how many people are coming. It is not a experience I'm proud of. So we're rebuilding that right now so that in the future you won't have to rely on a blog post. You'll be able to come in and say, well, what's the market in Tempe? What's the market in Big Spring?
Yeah.
And we'll tell you what's happening on our platform, and it'll help inform it. Over time, I can see how that evolves into something that's more address specific. What can I expect for this unit type?
Oh,
As
what a powerful tool.
AirDNA and Price Labs, they've built great businesses that we do not intend to compete with. But I think a lot of investors would pay us $2 a month if we were able to tell them everything that's going on with your market. And we'll obviously include it with our subscriptions and just power more data to make smarter decisions, because that 10-year future vision, it does rely on us to provide more transparency and data so people can make smarter investments and help grow the category. And so we're committed to figuring that out soon so that more people are making smarter investments.
Gosh, I love this game of real estate. Like, imagine this tool.
It's so much fun.
It's so fun, and it's endless amount of opportunity. It's the biggest problem with real estate, I tell people, is that there's too many ways to make money. There's too many. Like, it's endless. And where you guys are going and what you're doing, the need that you're satisfying is magical. But imagine a tool that, Furnished Finder, furnishedfinder.com/stats. You go there. Let's say I pay an extra bump on top of my $179 a year. I pay an extra $30 a year or whatever it is. That's too cheap. Raise your price. But let's say you aggregate the data from the Census Bureau, right? You aggregate the data of, I don't know that this could be done, but if you could pull permit data in local counties saying, hey, 85 permits got pulled. One of them's a data center. Here's X, Y, and Z. Right. Here's the heat map of things that are being built. Oh my gosh. Like, maybe that's a couple of years out for you guys.
Yeah, maybe we can build agents that are open source using LLM to go do this work for people. And then you plug into the Furnished Finder agent network, and we're helping you with research. It's not the core of what we're trying to do, but the mission of what we're trying to do is help independent landlords be financially independent. And whatever we can do to make that mission more viable with the data, the resources we have, we want to prioritize and go as fast as possible.
I'm so glad I talked to you today, because I did an ad yesterday where I'm writing out all the different exit strategies, right? And it's like, Airbnb, multifamily, RV parks, mobile home parks. And I'm going through all the asset types. Then I'm going through the exit strategies. Airbnb is an exit strategy, but I kind of throw midterm rental on the side. I'm like, yeah, and there's this thing called midterm rental. And now I have thousands of students doing it, but it just hasn't been something I'm excited about talking about all the time. But I look at my stupid little brain was thinking nurses, insurance. This is so much more than that.
This is the future. Nurses will always be a core thing we do. The future is about much more than nurses in terms of who needs this type of housing and how fast it's going to grow.
Do you have any idea of, your demographic breakdown, let's say 5 years from now, where things are moving? Right now you've got 30% corporate.
On the tenant side, if the growth rates we have now keep going, we will have more nurses on the platform in 10 years than we do today, but there'll be an even smaller percentage. It would probably be more like 15%. I expect the relocations and then the category that's basically I live in a Furnished Finder to be the ones that grow the fastest for the longest period of time.
I agree with that. And I think that, there's this really hot thing on social media where people are arguing, should I rent a home or should I buy a home, right? And in today's price environment, interest rate environment, for people that are using traditional real estate, I agree. Renting is actually a better case, right? For us in creative finance, our average interest rate is 3%. So, I'm basically paying half of what anybody else would be on the same purchase of a house. So I tell people, buy a SubTo deal, buy a seller finance deal. We've got 10,000 of them on creativelisting.com. Go buy those deals and whatever. But that's not 99% of the population. 99% of the population thinks traditionally, and they go, I got to put 20% down. I need to get a 6.5% interest rate. The prices are super high anywhere you go.
Yeah.
Why would I go buy a house when I could just go get something fully furnished? In fact, if I furnish my house, it would have been the same cost as my freaking down payment. And the beautiful thing is I can move in 6 months to a different city.
Well, and I think that question as it gets framed in the media is almost always about like, should I or shouldn't I rent, own primary? And I think the more interesting question is like, should I own or rent primary is actually separate from should I be buying real estate?
Correct.
And, and I think that the opportunity to buy a duplex and maybe have one unit be your primary for a while, but always know if you get a better job opportunity or end up getting married or have a different opportunity, like you're not emotionally attached to the other half of the duplex, you can get out of that and go somewhere else and rent. It's a different mindset than, certainly I think Gen X, most of my generation, and certainly the boomers, the emotional attachment they had to housing. And if you start to treat that emotional tax as a tax. You make different decisions on, I'm going to actually build wealth with a midterm rental that I might use part of the year or never use. And I'm going to use that wealth to live a better life renting wherever I'm going to be. And eventually I might be able to buy a primary house that I do have more attachment to because I've built wealth in midterm. And it's just I see a lot of this with millennials, and that there many people on the East Coast, their first home was an Airbnb. Their first housing purchase was a short-term rental, and then they were renting their primary. And I think you're going to start to see a more sophisticated version of that, where the first purchase is actually a midterm rental, and they're not living in it, but they've got the opportunity to use it 2 months out of the year, but they're really just building wealth so that they can, create the opportunity to have a different primary residence if they ever choose to buy one, which they might not.
Convince me why I should stay away from Airbnb as my first strategy and why I should go after midterm rental.
I think there's the Airbnb as a platform, I'm not talking people out of. I think people should be on Airbnb, but they should be charging more on Airbnb. They should have stricter terms on Airbnb, and they should be using it selectively so that they're not beholden to Airbnb. Short-term versus midterm, the reason I would start with the midterm, the price points are more approachable. You're talking about a urban, suburban inventory as opposed to typically leisure inventory. You're not competing with, the wealthy anesthesiologist. You're competing with other rational investors. You're more likely to be able to manage from home, and you're doing 4 turnovers a year instead of 45 turnovers a year. And so I think you get a way better return on investment when part of your equation is keeping the investment of your own time and money lower. And that's the most compelling reason to be playing in the category.
My gosh, I had so many different beliefs. You shattered them. Anything that our audience needs to hear in terms of maybe common misconceptions with midterm rentals?
Nursing is the most common misconception, that it's all about being close to hospitals. It's about hospitals, but it's also about commuter corridors, neighborhoods that have a lot of relocation, and then certainly it's about academic. If you find a place that's close to a commuter corridor with a university nearby and a hospital, it's going to work. You've just got to go find the right property. I think the second thing, the misconception that any short-term rental could fall back to a midterm rental is just not true. If you've got a portfolio on 30A in the Gulf Coast, it's a leisure portfolio. You can't fall back a 4-bedroom beachfront house to something that you're hoping to attract nurses to. Like, the economics just don't work.
Or even a transient worker.
Yeah, it's just
that's in the oil field. He's not going to go rent the beach house.
Yeah, it's just a different use case. And so I think you've really got to be focused on what tenant am I serving, and can I serve them better than the local offer? And that's different than who might be coming to Austin for a bachelor party. It's just different. And so, I think if you approach it as something that's bigger than nursing and approach it as something that's different than short term, you can really build something to where most people have a knowledge base already of who's coming to their town near where they live that they can go serve. And if not, you can always build that skill pretty cheaply, because it's 170. Like, start with house hacking, start with an ADU, start with a rent by the room, and just dip your toe in the water and see. This is not a massive commitment, especially if you are running an arbitrage model.
It's such a creative solution. I cannot wait for people watching the audience. If you're in the SubTo community, we're going to go and do a whole 12-part class on this, and I'll bring in a bunch of high-level students that are doing these things. But it actually is very creative in solving problems that nobody else can solve. Like the ADU in a backyard, let the lady live in the backyard. You pay her even, hey, I'll pay you monthly and you can have this free place. Like, depending on the deal structure. There's so many people that will be helped in this situation. And also governments are getting behind this, right? Yeah. I just had the largest grant writer in the country yesterday she goes, yeah, there's new grants coming out right now on the federal, state, county, local levels that are wanting to help fund people's ADUs because they want to double.
It's huge in California.
Huge.
It's the only way to solve the problem with the capital available.
And the land and all, proximity to work and all that kind of stuff. And the politics. So you look at Sacramento, for example. Sacramento just came out with a grant program for people that are doing co-living. And in Denver, Colorado, same thing. They're coming out with things saying, hey, we don't care. There was a law saying that if you have X amount of people, you probably know this better than me, X amount of people on a property, they have to be related.
Right.
Now they just abolished that. They said, we don't care if they're related or not. Oh my gosh, that opens up so much opportunity. Yep. So you see the government getting behind the midterm rental business model to a certain degree.
And it's the same government that's anti the short-term rental business model.
Correct.
Because you're solving actual housing. You're not solving leisure housing. You're solving durable housing, 90-day stays.
It's crazy to me. You know, the
or
reason
4-year stays.
right. And I look at, why does the government give us this beautiful thing called depreciation? Why do they give that to us? In my mind, it was to solve affordability, right? Hey, us, the government, want to reward and incentivize you as the real estate investor to go solve a problem we'll never be able to solve. Here's money, here's tax benefits. Okay, why the hell did they only make it available to people doing short-term rental? Because you are not solving a single problem other than leisure.
Yep.
It doesn't make sense to me. I feel like there has to be new legislation that comes out saying we will allow bonus depreciation on all asset types as an investment vehicle, because that will triple what you guys are doing in midterm rental, because everybody will leave short-term and go out. Not everybody. A significant
It'll
portion.
open up the investor base.
It'll open up the investor base where people go, wait, I can get depreciation and cash flow. I don't just have to go after depreciation and appreciation. I can get all of the beautiful things. That's going to change. There's no way it doesn't change. You have to incentivize people, and we're not going to build houses fast enough. Materials are not going to come down. Labor is not going to come down. It's going to be as competitive as it always is, if not worse. The only way to solve that affordability issue is to double the inventory. How do you do that? Well, you could do it with ADUs or tiny home not encampments, but tiny home communities. Furnished Finder solves all those problems. Yep. Oh my gosh. You educated me today.
Well, I've really enjoyed chatting.
My gosh, like your wealth of knowledge and how deep you've been in this world. It just goes to show you, when you double down on something your whole life, like, you become the master of the information.
I have. I've been staring at the data for a very long time, and I know I've got a pretty good appreciation for the pattern and where we're headed.
Is there a company that will come into the world that we don't know about yet? Vrbo, Airbnb, Furnished Finder, you guys all fit a niche, solve a problem. Is there a company that you think will come out, like a padsplit, right? They came out and they focused only on rent by the room. Is there a company you think that somebody's going to come out and solve a different problem that you guys don't solve?
Well, I mean, I'm not betting against it.
Any ideas out there that what it could be? Do you see any niches or anything that hasn't been solved?
I think that I have heard a lot of people talk about the niche, which is, how do we do room placements or help with assisted living for the boomers? And I think that, it's a different play on what we were riffing on earlier, but I do think there'll be something interesting there, which is, a marketplace that's combining some of the elements that a Care.com types provides with some of the elements that a Furnished Finder or, a Zillow or an Airbnb provides. And, potentially some of the elements of just like, social network would be going too far, but it is community. And so, I think there's still endless niches out there, depending on how hyper-focused you want to be on a specific, persona target. And that's one that I'm really just societally curious about. I think we're going to have a better solution there than building more extended. Yeah,
because you've got a lot of people that can't afford to go into a $6,000 a month assisted living facility. Nobody in their family can afford it. Where do those people go? Okay, well, they have to go live with mom and dad, or the son or the daughter, or what have you. And then son and daughter might not have space for that person. And so I see a lot of my community going and doing co-living, and they're trying to do golden girls co-living is what they're calling it. And the challenging thing there is you don't have the distribution or the awareness around finding enough of those people to keep your model going. There needs to be a platform that's way more sophisticated than an individual investor could ever be. You guys are hyper sophisticated. You have money, you have cash flow, you have investors, you have all these things that an individual investor going out and building a platform just won't have the eyeballs to get enough golden girls into their co-living. So I agree with that 100%. There has to be a massive solution around the retirees that maybe are a widow or a widower, and they are wondering, where do I go live? I'm not ready. I'm not 85 and incapable of walking.
And I don't want to sell this house distressed.
Right.
I'm living in it.
Right.
I like my neighborhood. I like my neighbors. What are the opportunities to help alleviate the?
Oh my gosh. So interesting. Thank you so much. Anything that you have as a call to action for the audience?
I think that if you're like I was 2 years ago, you may not even know Furnished Finder existed. My encouragement would just be come to the homepage, learn about us. Landlord Diaries is an excellent podcast we do every other week that just interviews individual landlords, like people in your community, on how they got started and who's their target and what are they doing. So I'd encourage people to just learn more. And for $179, if you've got property, try it. And if you don't have property, try it. Go out there and think about how you source a rental with a sublet option, or something that gives you a space to play in real estate without having to own right away. And I think we've got some creative opportunities for that.
Do you have anybody on your team that I could utilize to teach my audience
Absolutely.
privately and like build a course out for
Yeah,
them?
her name's Katie Lyon, and she's the host of the Landlord Diaries.
All right, Katie Lyon, you're in for a treat. Our average Zoom in SubTo is like 2,000 people that show up. They take action like crazy. We'd love to have thousands more houses on your guys' platform. This will be awesome.
One of the most common questions I get is, what title company do I use? What title company am I using in Arizona, Atlanta, California, Texas, whatever? The answer for many years was a different title company in every state, because not every state handles transactions the same way. Now, the answer is one title company. It's Creative Title and Escrow. Go to getcreativetitle.com/podcast. You can learn how they will do SubTo deals, seller finance deals, cash transactions, gator deals, double close, transactional lending, whatever, even novation agreements. There's really nothing that Creative Title and Escrow can't do. To learn how brand new investors are using Creative Title all the way up to the biggest players in the industry, head over to getcreativetitle.com/podcast.